Thank you for joining today's session. We will be getting started shortly. We do have a lot of folks signed up for today's session, and we want to give everyone a moment to log on and get connected so that we can dive into today's session. I do want to thank you all for joining us today. I am Jasmine Garrett here with the New Jersey Economic Development Authority. Today's session is an informational overview of the CSIT Catalyst and Clean Tech R&D voucher programs. A quick housekeeping note, we do suspect that many questions will be answered in today's presentation. However, you are able to write in questions at any point during the presentation using Zoom's Q&A feature. It is one of your Zoom command options and will allow us to make sure we are able to get back to you and let others see these questions and answers as well. Today's session is being recorded and will also be posted on our NJEDA and YouTube pages. The slides and other resources will also be available in the next few days. Now, to get us started with the presentation, I will shift things over to NJEDA's Program Officer of CSIT, Frances Keel. Thank you.
Thank you, Jasmine. Good morning, everyone. I'm glad that you were able to join us today. As Jasmine mentioned, we're going to do an overview of the Clean Tech and Catalyst voucher programs. Nishan, if you could go to the next slide.
Yes.
The agenda is we're going to have a introduction by Judith Sheff, the Executive Director for CSIT, and then I will be going over the sort of overview of the voucher programs and some administrative changes that are coming. Jackie Liu, our program specialist, will talk about the voucher application process, the review process, and the closeout, and then Nishant will talk about the compliance requirements. We'll have time for Q&A, and we'll also do a little wrap up. So you can either put your questions in the Q&A section, or you can hold your question till the end, and then we can take you off mute. You can ask your question, and we can verbally respond to your request. So Judith, do you want to just give us a few highlights of the program and...
Sure. So I'd like to thank everyone for joining us on this call to learn about the Catalyst and Clean Tech R&D voucher programs. These are one of the most popular programs that CSIT runs. And since the programs have been started, we've awarded almost $7 million in funding, about 200 different vouchers to companies to work with academic facilities, core labs, maker spaces across New Jersey. It's a great program. It's one that helps small businesses by giving them access to equipment that they might not otherwise be able to get access to as they're starting to get their businesses up and running. And additionally, it's a benefit for the academic institutions because they've got equipment that might not be being used all the time. And here's a way for them to be sure that equipment that they've got on their campuses are being used. Additionally, we have found that when companies have participated in the voucher program, it has frequently led to other engagements between the companies and our academic institutions where they found opportunities to collaborate potentially on applying for federal SBIR or STTR grants or other opportunities for collaboration. So really view this as not a once and done opportunity, but really a stepping stone. And what you will find is that the CSIT programs can be scaffolded together, not only with other initiatives from CSIT, but with programs and support from the New Jersey Economic Development Authority. So it's a really great program and a great opportunity. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Frances to provide an overview of the program and a discussion about some of the administrative changes that hopefully are being made to make the program easier to operate both for the core facilities and for the startup companies. Frances.
Thank you, Judith, and good morning again, everyone. Just a brief discussion, overview of the program. So we have the Clean Tech voucher program and we have the Catalyst voucher program. They're two separate entities, but they basically have the same objectives. So we want to allow the small businesses to take advantages of the top tier academic and equipment and lab facilities such as maker spaces. We're also starting to look at options for small businesses to access data sets that exist at these universities. It's to support specifically small companies with fewer than 50 full-time employees. And as Judith mentioned, it allows you to take advantage of these excellent R&D resources that are available to develop your innovative technologies, those that exist at New Jersey universities, as well as other federal laboratories. And I'll go into a little bit more detail in the next couple of slides on all of the core facilities that are part of the program. So basically, to obtain an award, you have to meet the eligibility requirements, and you can apply for multiple vouchers up to $40,000 over a 12-month period. There are no fees to apply, and there's no cost share requirement. So these grants are basically non-dilutive. You don't have to pay them back, and we don't request any equity in return for your participating in the program. The available funds that we have as of November 1st, we have $1,867,500 for Catalyst available awards, which is approximately 45 awards if we assume that everyone requests the full 40,000. For Clean Tech, as of November 1st, we have approximately 660,000, and that's for about 15 awards. Applications are reviewed and approved on a rolling basis, so there is no deadline. We are always accepting draft applications into the system. We review them on a rolling basis. We have a call with the core facilities every 2 weeks where we share the information regarding the draft applications, and we proceed as the applications come in. Also, I'd like to talk a little bit about the administrative changes that we're going to be facilitating over the next month or so. We are going to allow for 6 months to secure a core facility match that is different than what we have in the past. And this is to help us improve our processes, to make the system work a little bit faster, and so that we don't have applications languishing in the system for a year or more before we're able to make any connection. But I also want to note that at the end of that 6 months, if you're not able to find a core facility match, we will reject the application at that time, but then you would be able to reapply once you're able to better focus your statement of work or come to a consensus with the core facility on pieces of the project that you would like to pursue. So it doesn't mean that you can't reapply at all. It just means in that time period, we were not able to help you facilitate the use of one of the core facilities to match with them. But we do encourage you to continue to apply and to continue to revise your project scope and continue to submit for the program. Also, we will be including a requirement for a tax filings to confirm your annual revenue. One of the eligibility requirements is that you have to show that you have less than $5 million in annual revenues. So we will be requiring tax filings to confirm that. Also, we have identified that the voucher program is for for-profit entities only, so we will not be entertaining applications from nonprofit entities. And then finally, we also have approval from the board to allow for the executive director, Judith, to have the delegated authority to make non-material changes to the scope of work. Some of the applicants that currently have awards in the system, understanding that there are changes that may come at the 6-month mark or after you've done some of your research, that maybe you need a different piece of equipment or maybe you need to use a different facility at the same university. Those type of non-material changes can now be approved by the executive director, but they must be approved ahead of time before we do any modifications or changes to the scope of work or the budget or anything like that. So those can be requested, and we will review them, and we will approve them accordingly. Next slide. So this is the eligibility criteria, and most of this is the same as it has been since the program was in effect. You have to be authorized and in good standing to conduct business in New Jersey. Again, we will not be entertaining applications from nonprofit entities. You have to have a current tax clearance certificate, specifically listing CSIT. I know that sometimes there's a tendency to just print the certificate out, but if you look at the drop-down menu that's to the right, you can actually select CSIT as the agency. Sometimes it'll already have a pre-populated Board of Public Utilities or NJEDA. You just need to make sure that you select CSIT. Again, you can have no more than 50 full-time equivalent workers, and you have to have one worker at least 35 hours per week at the time of application. And a worker can be a founder, contractor, or consultant. They can be paid or unpaid. 50% or more of the cumulative hours worked by all workers, founders, contractors, and consultants must be conducted in New Jersey, and this is also calculated on a full-time equivalent basis based on 35 hours per week. And again, as I mentioned at the front of the presentation, you have to have less than or equal to $5 million in prior calendar year sales revenue, excluding anything that you've received as a grant. And you must submit your tax filings or other documentation showing your prior gross receipts and sales. Next slide. So this is a snapshot of our voucher asset map. So on the left, you'll be able to drill down on the universities. On the right, we have included Princeton Plasma Physics Lab. We have Hackensack Meridian Health. We have Coriel Life Sciences. We have also added NJEDA Strategic Innovation Centers. And just a word about the Strategic Innovation Centers. I know there's been quite an interest in the AI component that's being hosted at Princeton. We are working on developing equipment and assets that will be available at that site. Currently, we're not sure exactly what will be available there, but that is also an option for folks that want to do AI-focused projects and maybe look at data set information. Next slide. Okay, so this leads us into sort of the application process, the review and closeout, and Jackie is going to discuss this with you.
Thank you, Frances. So before I begin, I do want to make the distinction that we do have the two programs, as Frances mentioned. We have our Catalyst component, and this is mostly companies in areas like life sciences, technology, non-retail food and beverage, among others. So you can see that on the website. On the clean tech component, the company must be developing or testing clean technologies intended to avoid emissions or recapture greenhouse gases or criteria pollutants. So these are typically in the following target areas like energy efficiency, green buildings, transportation, and you can once again view that on the website. So that's the main difference between the two components. I would say the application process is split into two parts. So the first part begins by submitting our draft application on our website, and it's just basically, sharing a summary of the project, what type of equipment you will need, if you have a preferred core facility. If you don't know who you want to work with, that's okay as well. We will share that information with our partners. And then the second step is for us to take a look at that draft application to make sure that you do meet the eligibility requirements. And if you do, then we will share that draft application with our core facilities. If there is a core facility that is able to support the project and interested in working with you, they will reach out to you, and that's when you begin to develop a scope of work and a budget. And that is an agreed upon statement of scope of work between you and the core facility on what objectives will be carried out within the 1 year project. And once that is finalized, the core facility sends those documents to us. And that includes, once again, the scope of work, the budget, and a letter of support saying that, yes, we are able to support the project, with so and so company. Once we receive those documents from the core facility, which should be no more than 6 months from the time you submit your draft application, we will send you the submission code. And that is for you to finalize your application. So you will go back into the portal where you submitted the draft application. You will fill in the rest of the information, such as the employees that are, part of the company. You will answer a legal questionnaire. You submit all the other required documents like a tax clearance, employee verification, and then that will take us to step 6 here on the screen, which is for us to review the application. Do keep in mind that once we send you the submission code, you have 6 weeks to submit your full application. If you do not submit it within the 6 weeks, then you have to redo the whole process again. And the same thing applies to the 6 months to secure the core facility. If you do not secure the core facility within those 6 months, then your application will be rejected and you have to submit a new draft application. So during our review process, basically we just look at to make sure that you have all the information, and then EDA does a review on their end as well. And then if everything looks good, we issue you a approval letter. That approval letter does not mean that you can start the work yet. That is after you have signed the grant agreement. So the grant agreement has to be executed by Judith, which is our executive director, and by the company. And then once that has been signed, then you can begin working on the project. At the end of the project term, which is 1 year, or sometimes you can close out a little bit earlier, then you will submit documents for us to review. So that includes the annual report. We have the invoice from the core facility that shows the expenses, and that should match also the scope of work that was submitted to us. We'll also look at the employee log to make sure you're still conducting work in New Jersey, the employee verification, and an updated tax clearance certificate. And if you can go to the next slide, please, Nashan. So as I mentioned, these are documents to be submitted to us for the disbursement. So we'll take a look at that to make sure that you have completed objectives stated in the scope of work. The budget, still remains the same. And if it looks good, we send you a requisition form for you to sign, and then we process that on our end. And then you will receive a check in the mail for the amount listed on the invoice, and you'll use that check to pay back to the core facility. Okay. And next slide, please, Nishan. So this is what the requisition form looks like. Once again, we'll put the amount that was issued on the invoice. We'll put the details, such your company name, the product number, when you close your grant agreement, you sign that, and then we send that over to accounting, and then you'll get the check in the mail.
I just want to make one point here. Sometimes it's a little confusing because it says do not write below this line, but the applicant is supposed to fill out that certification block. So you fill in the date, the person who is going to be the payee, so the authorized person for the company, and then you print your name, and then you have to sign it as well.
Thank you, Francis.
Mm-hmm.
And that is all on my end. I'll pass it to Nishan to go over compliance requirements.
Hello, everyone. I'll be walking you through the compliance requirements and the document submission process in the NJEDA portal. So to begin with, for the compliance requirements, so for 2 years from the date of the execution, which is the date you sign the grant agreement, 50% of all the work conducted by the grantee's employees, contractors, and consultants must be conducted in a New Jersey location. This will be confirmed by having the grantee submit an employee log and an employee verification document annually during the 2-year period. All the grantees must report economic impact data to CSIT for a period of 2 years from the execution of the grant agreement by submitting a CSIT annual report using the MS Forms links, which you should be able to find on the NJEDA portal. Grantees may be asked to participate in future CSIT NJED alumni activities, such as serving as a panel member or participating in interviews about their program experience. So for compliance reporting, all required documents are submitted through the NJEDA portal, and these documents include the CSIT annual report, which is the Microsoft Forms, the employee log, employee document verification, as well as an updated tax clearance certificate. The tax clearance certificate should state CSIT as the agency name, or else it might get rejected. And now for the document accessing through the NJEDA portal. So firstly, when you receive the portal email, click on the link provided, and that will take you directly to the NJEDS application center. So if you already have an NJEDA portal account, simply click on the sign in at the top right and enter your login details. But if you do not have a portal account yet, click on the register part. You will be prompted to enter an email, username, a password, and a confirmation of the password. And once you complete the registration, you will be redirected to the page and back to the sign in screen to log in with your new credentials. As you can see it here. And after signing in, the user will be redirected to the compliance document request portal page, which should look like this. And once you are signed in, the compliance document request page, you can see the list of all the documents that you need to submit. But on the note, once you successfully submit a document, it will automatically disappear from the list. So the list here only shows the document that still needs to be uploaded and not the ones which are already submitted. So to begin a submission, you should click on the document request ID, which starts with the DOCR written here. This will take you to the upload document screen for that specific requirement. So this is how the document upload screen should look like. And on the document upload screen, you'll see a template location here if the document comes with a required template. So once you click on the link, you can download the document, complete it, and save it to your computer. And once the document is ready, you can click on the add file section and upload it. And this is where you'll complete and fill the required items such as the economic impact report and the employee log, as well as the verification documents. So after uploading, you can click on the submit documents part and finalize the submission. So, and as a reminder, once again, once a document has been submitted, it will no longer appear in the list on the main compliance page. And if you have any additional documents to submit, you'll simply need to repeat the process for each one. And if you have any question about accessing the portal or completing the compliance documents, we're happy to address them during the Q&A. And now I'll hand it over to Francis to wrap up the presentation.
Great. Thanks, Nishant. So basically, the items that we went over today were the administrative changes, and we anticipate posting a new notice of funding availability sometime between early December and mid-December. The applicants must use a New Jersey core facility. The funding cannot be used to support applicant personnel or applicant equipment purchases. You must use the funds at a New Jersey core facility. In terms of making adjustments to the statement of work, you may not make any changes to the SOW or the project path without prior approval from CSIT. And as I mentioned before, these items will be reviewed on a case-by-case basis. Once a request is made to CSIT to make any adjustments to the project, we will review and we will approve as they become appropriate. And the main thing, the most important thing is that the project cannot begin until you receive a executed grant agreement from the closing department. So you may not begin once you get the approval letter. You have to have that signed agreement in place before you can start the project. And that will correspond with, and we will be reviewing and checking as the invoices come in, that the dates of activities that have taken place do not precede the signing of that executed grant agreement. So we need to make sure that all of our ducks are in a row, that we have the agreed upon statement of work and budget approved, the letter of support, you conduct the project, the facility sends the applicant a invoice. We review all of your documents once they are submitted, all of the required documents, as well as the CSIT annual report. We make sure that what you was stated in the beginning as a statement of work and budget is consistent with the invoice that we received at the end of the project, taking into account that maybe additional pieces of equipment may be used, or there may have been minor changes, recognizing that in the beginning you sort of have your plan and your path forward, and there may be minor adjustments and tweaks to the project throughout the process, over the year, but we need to see consistency between what is stated in the beginning and what is invoiced at the end of the project. And we'll go to the next slide, and I think we are ready to take any questions. Again, this is the main voucher mailbox, in CSIT voucher at njcsit.gov. If you have a question specifically for one of us, please feel free to reach out to us directly, and we will start answering questions.
Perfect.
Francis, before you get to questions, let me make a couple of points. In addition to the agreement that a company is going to have with CSIT, depending on the requirements from the core facility, there may be a separate agreement that the company enters into with the core facility. This may cover things like intellectual property ownership, in some instances where a company is allowed into the facility to actually run the experiments themselves. There may be some user agreement requirements on the part of the facility, and you can work on that activity and those agreements in parallel with working on getting the documentation and the agreement from CSIT. Additionally, as Francis had mentioned early on, you have a budget of up to $40,000 in a 12-month period. And we have had instances where a company is doing a portion of a project at one academic institution and then another part of the project at a second academic institution. So you can split up the work depending on the requirements of your project. And then after 12 months are up, assuming we've got funding still available, a company can apply for a second voucher. So this is not necessarily a once and done opportunity for a company. After 12 months are up, you can apply for a second voucher.
Got it. Thank you, Judith.
Mm-hmm.
I do have some questions for you.
Okay.
So, can a company with no revenue, so they are in R&D phase and not selling anything yet, can they apply for the voucher program?
Yes. No, you would just have to, so instead of submitting your tax documents, if you have no revenue to show, you can submit a letter that says, you're a small startup company, no one is getting paid if that's the situation, and that at this time you do not have any internal payroll, and also you don't have any company revenue.
Got it. Thank you. The other question is, how does it work for companies? Do they have to put the money up front, or how do they go about it?
No, you don't have to put the money up front unless there is a requirement from the facility. Sometimes if you're doing an animal study, they require that you put a portion of the funding up front to purchase the animals. But typically the way the voucher works is you receive approval of the award, you sign the grant agreement, the work starts on the project with the facility. You have up to 12 months to complete your project. Once the project is completed, you will receive that invoice from the company. You will submit that invoice with all the other required CSIT documents. We will review the information. We will send you a requisition form to sign. We will issue you, the company, a check for the amount of the invoice, and then it's up to you to make that payment back to the university within a 2-week time period, so that the university is paid. So typically, there are no requirements to have the funding up front unless you're doing a specialized type of project.
Got it. And then just to expand on that, can you talk about how detailed does the budget have to be, in the scope of work? How do they have to detail the use of the facility and equipment?
Yes, so your statement of work needs to be very specific. You need to show, objectives of the project, milestones of the project, if there are different phases of the project, and what types of equipment are used at each of those phases, whether or not, as Judith mentioned before, we will allow for company personnel to either go into the facility and access the equipment themselves based on any training that needs to be done. The voucher funds can be used for that. So the company or the personnel at the company can actually go in and access the facilities if that's something that is allowable by the university. If the university requires that their own technicians operate the equipment, then the use of those technicians and the operation of the equipment is an allowable cost. And also supplies or consumables that are needed in the operation of that equipment would be allowable. But items such as, the applicant's personnel or applicant's own purchase of supplies and equipment, those items would not be allowable under the voucher program.
Got it. Thank you. What about if a company had a nonprofit status before, but now they're a for-profit? Can that change their eligibility?
They must be a for-profit entity at the time of application and throughout the project process. So if they are nonprofit now, but they have converted to a for-profit company, then they certainly would be eligible to apply, but they must maintain that status throughout the project and compliance period.
Got it. Thank you. So one company wants to know, can you clarify what the process is like for the matching part? Do they have to reach out to the facilities, or do the facilities reach out to them?
It's a combination of both. So if you have an existing relationship with a university that you've worked with in the past or that you would like to work with and you already have a connection with that university, you may begin presenting your project to the appropriate person. But once we receive your draft application, we do have specific points of contact that we work with at each university. So those persons would have to be looped into whatever activities you have already prior discussed with maybe a PI or a lab manager, so that those specific contacts would have to be the ones to submit the letter of support and to approve that, to approve the statement of work, and to approve the budget. So it goes both ways. If you do not have a entity that you would like to work with, you still need to be very descriptive in your summary draft application, identifying what types of equipment you need and what your project will entail, and it's specific types of items that you will need access to. And then, as Judith mentioned and Jackie mentioned prior, we have a bi-weekly call with our representatives from each of the core facilities, and we share that draft application information with them. At that time on the call, the core facilities may say, yes, I'd like to pursue that project, or I'd like to look into that a little bit further. We then share the draft application with those core facilities, and then you are connected with them. They will work with you directly to see if there is a match that can be made.
Right, thank you. And just going on the invoices. So if a company is working with two core facilities, how does that work with the invoices? Can they submit one while the other one finishes? And do they have to submit the invoices at the end of the project, or can they do it in the middle of it?
No, you have to submit the invoices once the project is complete. So if you're using more than one facility, you have to wait until both parts of the project are complete before you can submit all your documents, because as part of the necessary reimbursement process, you have to do the CSIT annual report, you have to do the employee logs, employee verification, and those items as well. So we do not do interim payments. We make one payment at the end of the project.
Thank you. And can you specify the percentages for the use of the voucher? What percentage can be used for certain consumables, supplies, and can it be used to pay employees if you hire one?
The funds cannot be used to pay company employees, and the breakdown of the funding needs to be negotiated with the university. So there is an allowance for use of some consumable and supplies in the use of the equipment. So as long as it's consumables and supplies that are going to be needed to operate the equipment, that is something that's usually factored into the cost of using the equipment. Any technician time that's needed is usually a separate budget line item that identifies, the type of equipment that will be used, the technician, and the number of hours they expect to need to use that equipment. So those are the items that, that's how you access the equipment at the facilities. There's no allowance for funding for the company itself. That was a different type of program that we've done in the past, which was the seed programs. And depending on how funding falls out for next fiscal year, we may be offering those again.
Yes, actually, that's one of the questions that I have. Are there any plans to continue another round of Catalyst voucher, or are we adding more funding to it?
So we will be continuing the Catalyst Voucher Program. The specific amount of funding available for next fiscal year will depend on what our budget is from the legislature. As I mentioned before, we have enough funding from now to the end of the fiscal year to fund about 45 additional projects. So we will continue to accept applications on a rolling basis and review and approve. Until such time the budget is exhausted. And then we do expect for the programs, both the Clean Tech and the Catalyst voucher programs, to continue on next fiscal year.
Got it. And once a company is done with the voucher and they want to do a follow-up study, can they apply for another voucher on the same project or a follow-up?
Yes, they can continue to escalate the project under new objectives and new studies after they have completed the 1 year project. Even if the project ends, like say in 10 months, the company may not apply for a new voucher until that 12-month period has been exhausted. So yes, the answer is yes, you can follow up your project with another voucher, but you cannot apply prior to the end of the initial 12-month period.
Got it. Thank you. And just want to clarify one of the questions before. So let's say a company received the voucher and they hire a new employee. Can that new employee also use the facilities under the voucher?
So that employee, if the facility allows for the company to come in and access the equipment, that is something that's negotiated between the company and the facility. As long as that is allowable, then yes, the person can come in and use the equipment at the facility, but any sort of salary that's associated with that would not be allowable under the voucher. It's just that if that's an employee and the facility offers on-site use of the equipment, then that would be allowable, but there's no sort of associated salary with that.
Okay, got it. And what happens if a company does not spend all of the funds within the 12 months?
There is an option to request a 3-month no-cost extension, but it has to be based on extenuating circumstances like issues with the supply chain or access to the equipment at the university was delayed, or some other sort of fundamental reason why the project did not proceed as scheduled. It's not just a typical, oh, we need more time. It has to be a specific reason why the project needs to be extended for 3 months. And you have that 3 months to complete the work. But the ultimate determination of how much is awarded or how much is refunded or resubmitted to the applicant depends on the invoice that you received from the university. So if your budget was initially $40,000 and for some reason, even given the 3-month extension, you weren't given enough time or was not able to complete the project as initially planned, then the invoice, if they give you an invoice for say $35,000, then that's the only amount that you would be reimbursed, and that would go to the university. The money although the company receives a check from NJEDA or CSIT, that money goes directly to the university. It's not money for the applicant to keep.
And what if at the end of the project, the core facility is not able to deliver all the data results after, until after the voucher deadline for submission? How is that payment handled? Would the check be delayed, or how would that go?
So it depends on whether or not the company, are able to complete the data that's required for the CSIT annual report. If you're waiting for reports from the university or the reports are delayed from the university, if that's a deliverable that was indicated in your original statement of work, then, and you would prefer to wait to get that document before you submit all of your other paperwork, that's really a question for you. If you feel like it's going to take longer than anticipated for you to receive that milestone or that deliverable, then you might want to request the 3-month extension and indicate that you're waiting for a deliverable that was initially indicated in the original statement of work. So yeah, it's kind of a case by case basis, and it's actually determined on what was agreed to between the company and the university at the onset of the project.
Got it. And how about companies are interested in using data sets? How would that fall under the voucher program? How is it, eligible?
So we are looking at, and we have approved some projects that are accessing data sets. The data set has to be a part of the entity or the core facility that you want to work with. You cannot go out and purchase a data set just out of the, from the universe or from the greater community. It has to be data sets that are available at the facility that you want to work with. With requesting access to data, the project should also indicate, whether you're using the data to test or to confirm a part of a app that you're developing, not the development of the app itself. The core facility cannot develop the app for you, but if you would like to request the use of data sets that you have available to test or to drive or to improve your app, that is an allowable charge. And items like supercomputers and other types of computing equipment, that would be things that would be allowable under the voucher.
Got it. And talking about the administrative changes, so if a company wants to make changes for the scope of work, let's say they want to add new equipment, how can they go about requesting that?
If you are requesting to use a different equipment that was identified in the original statement of work, or to request other non-material changes, it's best to send an email to myself and Jackie describing the original work scope and any adjustments that you're seeking to make to that scope.
Got it. And can you just give a reminder on how to request a no-cost extension?
Sure, yes. To request a no-cost extension, again, you would send an email to myself and Jackie. identifying the need for the extension, what the extenuating circumstances are, whether it's the supply chain, whether it's the lack of access to equipment, whether it's a delay in a deliverable, identify what the reason is for the no cost extension and submit that to us. And then once we take a look at it and, agree with the issue, we will then send you a letter that says that you have been granted the no cost extension that extends your grant agreement for 3 months. So say your original grant agreement, the 1 year ends, say December 31st of 2025, then you have an additional 3 months on top of that to submit your documents, to finalize the paperwork and things like that.
Okay. And when is the paperwork due if you have a no-cost extension?
So the paperwork, if you have a no cost extension, the paperwork is due at the end of the 3 months.
Got it. And last question is there a limit to how many vouchers you can apply for?
At this time, there is not, but that is something that we are taking under consideration as an administrative change in the future.
Got it. All right. I see no more questions, so I'll give another few minutes to get in your last questions.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to make certainly one comment is that if as a voucher applicant, you've got a signed agreement and for whatever reason you're running into difficulties with the core facility, please certainly come back and let us know if something seems to be not working properly, because again, we don't want to, wait 12 months and have you tell us, oh, no work got accomplished.
Yes.
Please let us know early on if for whatever reason either you need to make a change or something isn't, some of the communication isn't, what it needs to be to ensure that the projects are working well. So, please don't feel like it's burdensome to let us know if there's some challenges that you're facing.
Exactly. The sooner you reach out, the better. And also, we do plan on doing these types of information or sort of question and answer sessions on a regular basis. So within, probably every 6 months or so, we will send an invite to those who have an executed agreement and those that have draft applications in the pipeline, just to sort of, make sure everybody is on track. And if you have any questions specific to your project, you can always email us. And as Jude said, the sooner the better if you are experiencing some issues with accessing the facility or timelines or things like that.
And then let me also say the reason the compliance information is important, not only is it important so you can get the payment so that you're able to reimburse the core facility for the work that was done, but for a couple of years beyond the end of the project, we're asking for some follow-up data because we need to report back to the New Jersey legislature on what the results have been, what has been the economic impact of companies who have received funding from CSIT. And that just puts us in a stronger position as the state legislature is determining budgets for the different agencies. And if we're able to say to them, companies who have received vouchers, companies who've received funding from CSIT have grown this many new jobs in New Jersey, have raised additional third-party funding, have been able to get additional patents. All of that information, all of that storytelling is really important for us as we get and advocate for additional funding for early stage companies.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I see no more questions on my end.
Okay, great. Well, I want to thank everyone for participating today. Again, if there's any specific questions that you have regarding your project in particular, please feel free to reach out to us. We are always available or welcome participating in a Teams call, site visits. We definitely want to maintain contact and are always here to assist with your projects. So at this point, I think we will wrap it up, and thank you for participating.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.